The elevator jolted once, then froze between floors. Lights flickered, buzzed, and died, plunging the glass tower into silence. Emily Carter, 34, the sharp-eyed CEO of Carter Dynamics, gripped her tablet tight, seconds from an investor call worth millions. Across from her stood Jake Bennett, 36, a single father in a work jacket, toolbox at his feet and coffee in hand. For a tense beat, neither moved. Then she snapped, "Well? Fix it." He smirked. "Already on it, ma'am." Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside the glass tower of Carter Dynamics. Lightning flashed across the Chicago skyline, followed by the low hum of an overloaded generator. Jake Bennett wiped rain from his jacket as he stepped into the elevator, toolbox in hand. He'd been called in to fix a faulty circuit on the 15th floor, one more job before he could pick up his daughter from school. The doors were just closing when a voice called, "Hold it." A woman slipped inside, breathless, rain clinging to her charcoal coat. Jake barely had time to hit the button before the elevator lurched, then slammed to a stop between floors. The lights flickered once, then went dark. "What just happened?" she demanded, her tone sharp but trembling. "Power surge," Jake said calmly, prying open the panel. "Happens when the storm hits the grid." Sparks hissed. He adjusted a wire with steady hands. "You'll be fine." The woman folded her arms, forcing composure. "Do you know who I am?" He didn't even look up. "Doesn't change the wiring, ma'am." She opened her mouth to respond, but stopped when she saw his hands, rough and scarred, working with surgical precision. He spoke again, softer this time. "You're safe. I promise." When the lights finally flickered back on, she exhaled shakily. He glanced over his shoulder. "You okay?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I think you just saved my morning." He smiled faintly. "Guess we both got lucky." As the doors slid open, she caught his name on his badge, Jake Bennett, and something in her chest shifted, though she couldn't yet explain why. By the time Jake reached the lobby, the storm outside had turned the streets into mirrors of light and water. He clocked out, pulling his jacket tighter against the wind. The elevator incident already felt like one of those strange, passing moments, intense, then gone. But for Emily Carter, it was far from over. That morning's delay had nearly cost her company a multi-million-dollar investment. Yet somehow, the meeting went perfectly once the power was restored. Investors praised her composure. Nobody knew that composure came from watching a stranger, soaked and steady, fix what her team couldn't. Hours later, her assistant burst into the office. "Miss Carter, that maintenance tech from this morning is downstairs." "The one who?" "Bennett," she said quietly, remembering the name. "Send him up." Jake stepped into her office, hat in hand, looking out of place against the skyline view. "You called for me, ma'am?" Emily smiled, a little unsure why she'd done this. "I wanted to thank you personally. You saved more than an elevator today." He shifted awkwardly. "Just doing my job." When one of the executives nearby muttered something under his breath about janitors and luck, Emily's voice cut through the room like thunder. "That man accomplished what 3 of our engineers couldn't." The room fell silent. Jake's eyes flicked to hers, surprised. After the meeting, she followed him to the elevator, the same one he'd fixed. "You have a daughter, right?" she asked, nodding toward the photo peeking from his toolbox. "Lily. 8 years old. Smart kid." Emily hesitated. "I'd like to offer you something, a new position. Lead systems engineer. Better hours, better pay. You deserve it." Jake frowned. "Ma'am, I appreciate it, but I've got to pick my girl up every day. I can't miss that." Emily smiled softly. Then we'll make the hours fit your life, not the other way around. For a moment, neither spoke. Just the quiet hum of the elevator between them. Then Jake nodded slowly. You're not like most CEOs. Maybe, Emily said, her eyes softening. But I'm starting to wish I were a little more like you. The rain had stopped by the time Jake pulled up to his small apartment on the south side of Chicago. The city still glistened, puddles catching the last traces of light. Inside, laughter spilled from the living room as his daughter, Lily, sat cross-legged on the rug, crayons scattered around her like candy. "Daddy," she grinned, running into his arms. He lifted her easily, exhaustion melting away. "Hey, Peanut. You get that spelling test back?" B+, she announced proudly. "Miss Turner said I'm getting better." He smiled. "I told you, hard work always pays off." She tilted her head, squinting. "Did it pay off for you today?" Jake chuckled, dropping onto the couch. "You could say that. I fixed a fancy elevator. The boss lady said I saved her meeting." Lily gasped. "The boss lady? Was she mean?" He laughed. "Actually, not at all." He thought of Emily, her calm voice, the way she defended him in front of the board. She was different. Later that night, as Lily slept beneath her blanket fort, Jake sat at the kitchen table staring at a new envelope from Carter Dynamics, a job offer with more zeros than he'd ever seen. It almost didn't feel real. He turned the paper over, noticing the handwritten note clipped to it. "Thank you for fixing more than the elevator. E.C." Something about those words made him pause. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not just as a worker, but as a man trying his best to build a life from the pieces left behind. Outside, thunder rumbled far off over Lake Michigan. He glanced toward his daughter's room and whispered to himself. "Looks like things might finally be changing, kiddo." He had no idea how right he was. The following Monday, Jake Bennett walked into the shimmering glass lobby of Carter Dynamics, wearing the same jacket he'd had for years, freshly washed, but patched at the elbow. He felt out of place among the sharp suits and polished shoes, but his stride stayed steady. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here to do the work. Emily watched from her corner office as he arrived, chatting easily with the front desk staff. Something about him stood out in a world where everyone seemed to rush for attention. Jake moved with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove a thing. By noon, he'd already solved a ventilation glitch that had plagued the engineering floor for months. When one of the junior techs muttered, "How'd you even figure that out so fast?" Jake just smiled. "Listen long enough, and things tell you what's wrong. Same goes for people." The words hit Emily later that afternoon during a tense board meeting. Her executives bickered over quarterly losses, numbers flying like bullets. But as she stared out the window at the rain-streaked city below, she heard Jake's voice echo in her head, "Listen long enough." That night, she found him in the basement workshop, tightening a fuse panel with his sleeves rolled up. "You're still here," she said softly. "Almost done. Just fixing what others stopped noticing." She leaned against the wall, studying him. "You ever get tired of fixing things that aren't yours to fix?" He met her gaze evenly. "Sometimes. But then I remember, most things worth keeping were built by people who didn't have to help." Silence lingered between them, not awkward, but charged. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "I used to believe that too, before this job made me forget." Jake wiped his hands, offering a faint smile. "Then maybe you just need a reminder." As she left, Emily realized that in one afternoon, the man who fixed machines had repaired something deeper, something she hadn't realized was broken inside her. A week passed, but Jake's presence rippled through Carter Dynamics like quiet thunder. He wasn't loud. He wasn't ambitious. Yet somehow, everything he touched worked better, not just the wiring and circuits, but the people themselves. He ate lunch with the janitors, joked with security, and once stayed late to help an intern fix a project no one else had time for. Word spread fast, the new guy doesn't just fix machines, he listens. Emily heard it all from her assistant, who spoke with rare admiration. But it wasn't until one late evening, while walking past the break room, that she saw it herself. Jake was sitting with a young technician named Aaron, showing him how to rewire a circuit board. "I read the manual 3 times, the kid said. Still couldn't get it." Jake chuckled. "That's your problem. Manuals tell you what something should do, not what it feels. Machines have moods. Learn those, and you'll never need instructions again." Emily leaned quietly against the doorframe, a small, unguarded smile forming. It reminded her of someone, her brother, Daniel. He'd been an engineer too. Before his accident, before everything changed. Later that night, she found herself in her office staring at the framed photo on her desk, Daniel laughing in a grease-stained jumpsuit beside a prototype engine. He'd been everything she wasn't, grounded, kind, unshaken by success. And for the first time in years, she realized Jake Bennett carried that same light. The next morning, she stopped by the maintenance bay under the pretense of checking the wiring. Jake looked up, surprised. "Didn't expect to see the CEO down here. Thought I'd see what a miracle worker's workspace looks like," she said. He grinned faintly. "Spoiler, it's just bolts and dust." She hesitated. "You remind me of someone. My brother. He was an engineer too." Jake nodded slowly. "Then he probably knew what it meant to build things that last." Emily met his gaze. "He did. And I think, he'd have liked you." Jake didn't know what to say. But as she walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that, for the first time, the walls between them were starting to crack, and what waited beyond wasn't business at all. Friday evening brought a rare calm to the city. The rain had finally given way to a cool, gold-tinted sunset that spilled between skyscrapers. Most of the staff had already gone home, but Emily lingered in her office, watching the lights flicker on across downtown. When a soft knock broke the quiet, she turned, and there was Jake, holding a small cardboard box. "Didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "Just came to drop this off." She raised a brow. "What is it?" "Your elevator's old control module," he replied with a faint smile. "Figured you might want to keep the thing that nearly ended your career but started your good luck instead." Emily laughed, a real, unguarded sound. "I'll put it next to the awards I actually earned. Probably deserves its own plaque," he teased. "The day a CEO got stuck with a janitor and left with a human heart." She rolled her eyes, but there was warmth in it. "Careful, Bennett. You're starting to sound like my PR department." Their laughter faded into a softer quiet. Then, as if pulled by something unspoken, she asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently? That life hadn't pushed you into this?" He took a slow breath. "I used to. When my wife passed, I blamed everything, money, timing, bad luck. But then I realized, some things don't need fixing. Some just need forgiving." She looked at him, her composure faltering. "Forgiving who?" "Myself," he said simply. Something in those words cracked her calm exterior. She turned toward the window, blinking faster than she meant to. "My brother died in an accident here," she said quietly. "He was working overtime. I told him to stay and finish the prototype. I thought success was worth sacrifice." That night, the lab caught fire. Jake didn't speak. He just stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "You couldn't have known." She shook her head. "Maybe not. But I forgot what mattered. I built an empire and lost the only person who'd built it with me." For a long moment, the city hummed beneath them, endless and far away. Then Jake said softly, "Maybe this time, you don't have to fix anything. Maybe just start again." Emily turned to face him, her eyes shining. "And where would I even start?" He smiled faintly. "Right here seems fine." The following week began like any other, back-to-back meetings, endless reports, a city that never slowed down. But by Thursday evening, as thunder rolled over downtown, Jake had a strange feeling in his gut. He was finishing a wiring check on the executive floor when the lights flickered once, then again. "Not tonight," he muttered, checking his voltage reader. Everything seemed fine. Yet the hum of the generator below sounded wrong, too soft, too uneven. Down the hall, Emily was in the middle of a late conference call when the room suddenly plunged into darkness. Her voice caught mid-sentence. "Jake," she called instinctively, though she had no idea if he was even nearby. He was. Within seconds, a beam of light cut through the gloom, Jake's flashlight, steady and sure. "Stay where you are," he said, calm as ever. "Backup power's down. I'll have it running in a minute." But the outage wasn't ordinary. Somewhere in the tangle of systems, a fuse had blown from a voltage spike, the kind that shouldn't have been possible with their new security upgrades. As Jake pried open a panel, he saw something that made his jaw tighten. The system had been tampered with. Emily stepped beside him, her voice low. "What do you mean tampered?" "Someone bypassed the breakers. This was no accident." She froze. "Are you saying someone did this on purpose?" Jake nodded grimly. "Someone who knew exactly how to hit your main power line." Minutes later, emergency lights flickered on across the top floor. The board members, irritated and restless, gathered near the lobby, whispering about maintenance failures and poor oversight. One of them, a sleek, condescending man named Harris, turned to Emily and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ma'am, maybe hiring handymen for technical work wasn't the smartest call." The words hung sharp in the air. Emily's jaw tightened. Before she could reply, Jake spoke, calm, but cutting. "With respect, sir, the person who sabotaged your grid knew what they were doing. I'm here to stop it from happening again." The crowd murmured. Emily looked at him, steady, unshaken, defending her even when it wasn't his place. By midnight, the system was restored. The lights glowed again, steady this time, but the air between them was different, heavier, charged. When the others finally left, Emily turned to him. "You didn't have to do that." Jake met her eyes. "Sure I did. You'd have done the same for me." She smiled faintly. "You think too highly of me." He shook his head. "No, I think you've just forgotten who you are." Outside, the storm had passed. Inside, something else was beginning, a quiet trust neither of them wanted to admit. The next morning, the building buzzed with tension. Word of the blackout had spread, but rumors had twisted it into something worse, whispers of system failure, security breach, and human error. Jake arrived early, tool belt slung over his shoulder, only to be stopped by security. "Sorry, Mr. Bennett," one guard said awkwardly. "Management wants you to check in with HR before heading upstairs." HR. That word alone made his stomach tighten. He knew what it meant, someone was looking for a scapegoat. Inside the glass office, a thin man in a tailored suit greeted him coldly. "Mr. Bennett, there's concern that your recent modifications to the electrical grid may have contributed to last night's outage." Jake blinked. "I fixed the problem, not caused it." The man smiled thinly. "Be that as it may, Ms. Carter has been asked to suspend all non-essential contractors until the investigation concludes." Jake's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "And who decided I'm non-essential?" The man didn't answer, just gestured toward the exit. By the time Jake left the office, his badge had been deactivated. His truck felt heavier that morning as he drove away, each mile filled with the same dull ache of unfairness. But more than anger, he felt disappointment, not in the company, but in himself for believing things could really change. That afternoon, Emily stood in the boardroom surrounded by restless executives. "You let a maintenance worker handle high-security infrastructure," Harris said sharply. "You jeopardized the company's image." Emily's voice was quiet, but firm. "He saved this company's systems. If not for him, we'd still be sitting in the dark." Another board member folded his arms. "Regardless, Ms. Carter, it's poor optics. He should be replaced immediately." Emily looked out the window, rain streaking the glass again. She remembered Jake's words the night before, "You've just forgotten who you are." She turned back to the table. "You're right," she said. "It is poor optics, because the optics show me firing the only honest man in this room." Silence fell. Harris blinked, caught off guard. Emily continued, her tone steady. "Until further notice, Jake Bennett reports directly to me. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can put it in writing, and bring it to my office personally." She walked out before they could respond, her heels clicking like thunder against marble. Later that evening, when Jake heard a knock at his door, he half expected another blow. But when he opened it, Emily was standing there, umbrella in hand, soaked from the rain. "I reinstated you," she said simply. He frowned. "You didn't have to." "Yes," she interrupted softly. "I did. Because sometimes the world needs reminding that honesty still matters." For a long moment, they just stood there, two people from different worlds, both drenched, both finally beginning to trust again. Saturday morning came quiet and gray. Jake was fixing the old coffee maker when a knock echoed through his small apartment. Lily beat him to the door, her ponytail bouncing. "Daddy, someone's here," she called. Jake wiped his hands on a towel, and froze. Emily Carter stood in the doorway, holding a paper bag and an awkward smile. "I come bearing peace offerings," she said, lifting the bag. "Pancakes, courtesy of the cafe downstairs." Lily gasped. "You brought pancakes?" Jake chuckled, shaking his head. "You didn't have to, Ms. Carter. After what happened this week," she said softly, "I think we can drop the formalities. It's Emily." Soon the three of them sat around the worn kitchen table, laughter and syrup replacing tension. Emily helped Lily cut her pancakes, listening as the little girl talked about school, friends, and the robot she was building from spare toaster parts. "She's got your stubbornness," Emily said with a grin. Jake smiled. "She's got her mom's imagination. I just keep the screws tight." For a while, Emily forgot about board meetings and deadlines. She found herself watching how Jake moved, patient, attentive, gentle in all the small ways that big men rarely were. After breakfast, Lily ran off to the living room to show Emily her drawings. One of them made her pause, a stick figure family standing beside a tall building, smiling. "That's Daddy," Lily explained proudly, pointing. "And that's you, the lady from the elevator. Daddy says you're the reason he got a second chance." Emily blinked, her throat tightening. "He said that?" "Uh-huh. He says good people help each other, even when nobody's watching." When Lily ran off again, Emily turned to Jake, her voice low. "You teach her good things." He shrugged. "Trying to. The world's rough enough, figured she should know kindness still works." For a moment, she just looked at him, realizing how far from her own words and values she drifted before he appeared in her life. Then she whispered, "Jake. I think you fixed more than my elevator." He smiled faintly. "Guess that makes us even then." Outside, the storm clouds were breaking. Light poured through the window, soft and golden, falling across all three of them like a quiet promise of what was still possible. 2 months later, Carter Dynamics hosted its annual charity gala, a glittering night of glass, music, and high society smiles. The event had always been about profits and publicity, but this year felt different. The theme, chosen by Emily herself, read in silver letters above the stage. Building futures, not fortunes. Jake stood near the back, tugging at his borrowed suit jacket, feeling wildly out of place among the champagne and crystal lights. Beside him, Lily spun in her small blue dress, eyes wide. "Daddy, are we rich now?" she whispered. He laughed softly. "No, kiddo. Just invited." When Emily stepped onto the stage, the crowd quieted. She wore a simple black gown, elegant, but grounded, and for once, her voice trembled, not from nerves, but from meaning. "This company was built on innovation," she began, "but lately, I've learned that real innovation doesn't come from technology or money. It comes from people like Jake Bennett, who reminded me that kindness isn't a weakness. It's the foundation everything else stands on." The crowd turned as she gestured toward him. Jake froze, his face coloring as applause rose around the room. Lily clapped wildly, grinning up at him. "Come on, Daddy. That's you." He walked to the stage, uncomfortable but smiling, as Emily continued, "He didn't just fix an elevator. He fixed a company. He reminded me what leadership means, listening, trusting, caring." Her gaze softened. "And, maybe, what it means to start over." When the applause faded, she leaned closer and said quietly, "You once told me some things don't need fixing, just forgiving. You were right." Jake's voice was low, steady. "Guess we both learned something in that elevator." Later that night, as the gala emptied and the city glittered beneath them, they stood by the balcony overlooking the skyline. Lily leaned sleepily against Jake's leg, a half-eaten cupcake still in her hand. Emily smiled down at her, then looked up at him. "You know," she said softly, "when that elevator stopped, I thought it was the worst day of my life." Jake smiled back. "And now?" She hesitated, her eyes warm in the city light. "Now I think it was the best." He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Below them, Chicago glowed, alive, hopeful, rebuilt by the kind of people who still believed in second chances. And somewhere deep in the heart of the building that started it all, the elevator hummed quietly again, proof that sometimes, the moment that stops your life is the one that finally sets it in motion. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.